Live from the Business Radio X studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and we are broadcasting as usual from inside Renaissance Bank in beautiful Alpharetta, just south of downtown Alpharetta, and it is gorgeous today. Hey, folks, just a quick reminder that if you are tired of a banking experience that squeezes the life out of you some days, and if you're at one of those big mega banks, they really don't want to talk to you in person. And guess what? The folks at Renaissance do, because they believe in personal service. And I have found, or at least certainly the clients I refer to them tell me, that they are big enough to handle pretty much any need that they can deliver up, but they're small enough to deliver that service in a personal way. So if that's a magic combination you'd like to experience, go to renaissancebank.com and find one of their local offices and give them a call. I think you'll be glad you did. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And now I want to welcome Sue and Craig Derene. Sue and Craig are with Franchise Connect Pro. Sue, Craig, welcome.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, John. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Great to have both of you. Great to have you back, actually. It's been a minute or two, and maybe even a pandemic. I think it's been a minute. It's been a while. So it's great to get refreshed on what you're up to. For those that don't know you, though, let's tell everyone how you're serving folks out there.
Sure. Again, my name is Craig. My business partner and wife is Sue. She actually started the business about 12 years ago, and I joined her about 9 years ago. And what we do, John, is we help people figure out what the right business model is for those that want to get into franchise ownership. Most people think of the McDonald's, the Subways, the Chick-fil-A's of the world, and those are great franchises, but very different business models. Mm-hmm. So we're really matchmakers, and we represent hundreds of franchises. And for us, it's all about finding the right business model for those that want to invest.
That's great work. Let's talk a little bit before we get into some of the details of that. Let's talk about why this business. And I think you misspoke earlier, Craig. I think she's your boss, right? That's what I think I
Absolutely.
heard. But I had to do that to you. You do that, right?
There's no question. You didn't have to think about it 100%. So I joke that we've just celebrated our 39th anniversary.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
So she's my boss on that front.
Yeah.
And she is the owner of Franchise Connect.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful, actually, you're able to work together, because a lot of couples aren't, right? So congratulations on that, too. But yeah, let's talk about your backstory. Sue, you got into the business first and then brought Craig along for the ride and the fun. Talk about why you did that.
Sure. Both of us have a background in corporate America. Mm-hmm. As our kids were getting older, I decided it would be fun to have our own business. So I started looking around at franchising, frankly. The more I talked to the gentleman who was helping me out, the more I realized what I really wanted was his job. And he was a franchise consultant. Okay. And that's how it came to be.
He probably didn't like that too much, did he?
It was not exactly what he had in mind. But it does happen to us occasionally, too. So that's really how I became a franchise consultant, and I love it. It gives me an opportunity to help people. Helps me to change their lives, whatever their situation is. If it's a mom going back into the workforce who wants to be around for her kids but wants to make money, if it's people who are looking to diversify their investments, if it's people leaving corporate, either voluntarily or involuntarily, we work with them. So I love it. I really am making people happy every day.
Yeah, and your clients, it occurs to me, your clients are at a big crossroads and sometimes a pretty vulnerable time in their lives, right? They have been out. I love the corporate term for this, outsourced. They've been fired, basically, and as corporate America ages people out regularly as part of their strategic plans. That's just my editorial comment, folks. But people are at vulnerable points in their lives. They're at crossroads, and they're confused. And you come along to help guide them through that confusion, potential confusion anyway, right?
Absolutely. I believe that one of the reasons why Craig and I are so successful is we can relate to people. We've been there. We've experienced that from corporate. Mm-hmm. And it's about building a relationship and building that trust. There's hundreds of franchises out there. You can't Google your way to the right one. And so hopefully, like, you respect a realtor when you're looking for a new house. That's really how we look at our role, is we're the realtor for franchise opportunities. So we do talk to people in all different points in their life and career and personal.
And to your point, John, about the vulnerability, absolutely. It's a crossroads. And sometimes people that we work with that are at that crossroads, some of the options are to go down the middle. Keep your corporate job for today, right? Look at starting a side gig so you not only are getting some additional revenue stream today, but you're building an eventual corporate exit strategy, right? And that's something that a lot of folks don't realize. So to Sue's point, we help with that crossroads. It's not necessarily a one or the other thing. And the other thing, John, that we see frequently is multiple times to the rodeo, meaning there's many times where folks are at that crossroad, but they're not ready to cross that line.
Right.
That's okay. So we frequently talk to many of our clients a year, 2, 3 years later when the timing is right. So it's not just at the crossroads, but timing has to be lined up as well.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when someone comes out for whatever reason and comes out and they're looking for a potential franchise, I love what you said, Sue, about how they can be really overwhelmed, right? And sometimes it's the shiny baubles that pop to the top, right? It's the franchisors that are really good at marketing themselves that pop to the top, and they might not be the best choice.
That's right. It's really about the business model. First, if I take a step back, and if you are the prospect looking to own a franchise, what is it you're looking for out of this business? What are your key objectives? What are your long-term goals? What's your investment capabilities on a business? We talk about all of those things and much, much more. Time commitment is also really important. Craig mentioned doing this as a side hustle, perhaps. That can be done with some businesses, but not all businesses. What are your income goals? What's realistic in a business? We do find a lot of people are looking for the pie in the sky, don't want to spend a lot of money, don't want to spend a lot of time, but want to have a really high ROI. And not to be flippant, but sign me up all day.
Yeah, right.
Owning a business is not that easy. You have to understand what it's about. And that's another thing that Craig and I bring to the table, is making sure people understand it's not just following that dream. Gee, I always wanted to be my own boss and have a business, but what does that mean? And what does that mean for you?
Yeah, these are really good points, because there is such a big come on. I see this. There's such a big come on from some franchisors, not all of them, but some of them, about how they're pitching absentee ownership. And we know better in a lot of cases, right?
That's true.
Yeah. Say more about that.
Yeah, ironically, we were at a dinner last night, a business dinner with some of our colleagues, and we were actually talking about that. Most of the colleagues that were there have been in the business for a while, and we were all in full agreement that true absentee that franchisors might advertise, is really difficult, especially when you're investing.
Right.
So it was great, not just for Sue and I, because the truth is we're a little bit of on an island, right? That there are other folks that do what we do, and we are part of a larger organization, but it's not very frequent we get together. So when we have the opportunity, we do. And like I said, we were downtown at a dinner last night, which was awesome, just to compare notes.
Sure.
And we were all on that same page about what ultimately we'll be talking about is responsible franchising, which goes to the how absentee can you be or not.
Fully absentee is, in my mind, a real misnomer. There are a handful of businesses, this new to franchising, that are being sold as a managed model, meaning you just invest. And the franchisor will hire the person to manage it. They'll do all the employee hiring. And in theory, you get your check at the end of the month. Handful is becoming fewer than a handful. It doesn't work. No one's going to care about your business the same way you are. And if you're not devoting some time and energy to that business, it's just not going to grow. Does that mean that if you invest in a business 3-4 years down the road, it can't be more absentee? Absolutely not. But you have to work the business to get to that point. It's very hard to start it that way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Craig, you brought this up, this term responsible franchising. Let's talk about what you mean by that and why that's so important.
Yeah, I'm actually going to defer to my boss on
Okay.
that one.
Okay. Bring it on, Sue.
Okay. Responsible franchising is a hot topic. You'll read about it a lot in franchising trade rags and so forth today. It's not a new concept. It's a revisiting of what franchise is all about. Why have franchises been so successful for so many years? There's a few key factors that all franchisors should be bringing to the table. That's things like being fully transparent in their business model as a prospect is looking at them. That goes from services, lead generation, time commitment, all the things we just mentioned. It's also being fully transparent on some of the financial realistic thing. There are some FTC rules on what they can and can't say, but it's that transparency that's really important. It's about the ongoing support structure. Are they going to keep providing proper support 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the road? Most franchises are a 10-year commitment. It's also the right franchisees to make the team for the brand. That may mean franchisors turning potential prospects away. You want to have a cohesive team to build that brand. You're not competing against one another. And one of the other things that's really important is sustainable growth and capital adequacy.
Right.
There's a lot that goes into this whole topic of responsible franchises. And I would just say one of the last things is it's becoming a little bit more apparent that some franchises are using franchise sales organizations and they're selling an awful lot of franchises, but not opening them. And so as part of what you're looking at when you are examining a franchise, and this is something Craig and I are really strict about, is it's great to sell a lot, but you got to make sure they're opening also. That would be the brand that you may have seen on every street corner all of a sudden that you had never heard of. They're everywhere. And then all of a sudden, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, you go, wow, where did they all go? So opens, not just sales, are really critical.
Right. Being open like a couple of years afterward, too. I mean, but I don't understand, and maybe my listeners understand, and I don't, but that's not unusual. Why would a franchisor sell so many that never open? Or is that the intention? That doesn't sound like the intention, right?
It's not responsible. It's
Well,
responsible
for certain,
franchising. Yeah. What happens is lots of times people will say they want to have a lot of growth. They're going to want multi-units or they want to grow a really big business. So the way to do that is when you start, if you commit to, let's say, 3 units, for argument's sake, let's call it a fitness franchise. You start with 3 units. You have a development schedule, typically over a 3 to 4 year period to open all of them, but you get a discount when you commit to all of them up front on the franchise fee. And also you get to be sure to reserve the territory you want.
Gotcha.
So somebody else doesn't come in. Lots of times people will commit to 3, but if the first one isn't going well, then what happens?
Yeah.
And Sue mentioned FSO, which is franchise sales organizations.
Yeah.
And that's really where, unfortunately, it happens more frequently than we like to see, that sales far outpace openings, because these FSOs, and they're great, right?
Not all FSOs are bad.
No, there's certain FSOs that all they want to do is sell, but there are certain FSOs that measure how many are being sold versus opening. So what Sue and I do is we look at not just a particular brand, right, but who is representing them. So, for example, there's certain FSOs that we work with that might represent 5 or 6 brands, right, which is great. But we may only recommend 2 or 3 based on the measure of opening versus sales. So again, that's something that Sue and I help with regarding, like Sue said, there's some great FSOs. Ironically, again, last night at dinner, our colleagues and I were talking about which sales organization do you prefer to work with and why don't you prefer to work with these? And we were all pretty much in agreement. We're pretty astute with that as well.
Got it. But you represent the individual or entity that wants to buy the franchise.
Correct.
That's your sole business.
That is correct.
Just to be very clear about that for our listeners. What you mentioned, some of these responsible franchising principles. Which of those are really the ones that you key in on that really give you an indication of whether that franchise system is a good one to invest in or not? Yeah,
it's all about fit, right? So One of the analogies we like to use is very similar to a marriage. And yes, Sue and I have been married 39 years. And you'd have to look at that way when you're investing in a franchise that you're going into a marriage, that it has to work on both sides. You have to compromise. And so it's all about a fit. Sue's also previously mentioned that sometimes, occasionally, candidates are rejected by the franchisor. And an important point on that, John, is franchises are awarded. You may have all the money in the world and say, hey, I want to buy Acme franchise. But if it's not a fit, that comes back to the responsible franchising. Is that franchisor really picking the right people to be part of that group and become married to for 10 years?
Yeah, I would say some of the other things we look at, though, on selecting which brands we want to represent for our prospects. We look at, again, we've mentioned a few of these, the open and close, but it's also what is the education provided to the prospect? What's the support structure that's going to be provided? How well capitalized is the franchisor? Does the potential prospect actually have enough money and enough time to do this business?
Yeah.
There are a wide range of investment ranges, time commitments, et cetera. So we look at all of that. Again, those are things you can't Google your way to. Craig mentioned earlier about the pizza franchise. You may love pizza and you may see a line around the door. It does not mean that you should own a pizza franchise.
Yeah.
So we look at the whole company. We look at culture. There's so many different elements that are part of that fit.
When John, you went earlier on in the conversation, you talked about the shiny new object or the shiny new brand. So this is a good segue into also the matchmaking exercise that Sue and I go through. When we talk to folks, one of the questions we ask is, tell me a little about your ego, and is the sexiness of a business important? So for example, a residential cleaning business, right? There are certain, as an example, a corporate executive that used to manage hundreds of people and had a big title. Right? Is that individual, while he's at his fancy golf club, going to say, hey, buddies, yeah, I just left corporate and I now own a residential cleaning? It's an extremely profitable and a great business, and you could be laughing all the way to the bank.
Sure.
But if that person has an ego about, what that particular product or service is, that also comes into the matchmaking play.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it strikes me, too, that you help potential franchisees match their own skill sets with the right franchise. So it's not just about, for example, I love books and therefore I want to open a bookstore, right?
Correct.
That may be the exact wrong thing to do. Say more about that, Sue.
Sure. So we can take a look at that. If people have a passion for something, sometimes finding your right business and earning the money that you're looking for allows you to do that passion on the side. It doesn't necessarily mean it should also be your business. So that's part of what we look at. But again, it's the business model that we examine more than just the brand. Obviously, it will eventually tie to a brand, but how does it meet what your personal objectives are? Do you want to manage a lot of people, or do you only want to have a couple of employees? It's, again, I always go back to the realtor example because people understand that more simply sometimes than the franchise consulting. Do you want 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths, or do you want 5 bedrooms? Do you want to be in town or out of town? It's very similar, but our questions are related to what type of business you're going to want.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll clear that up a little bit.
Yeah, no, it does. Sue and Craig Derene are with us, folks, and they are with their own firm, Franchise Connect Pro. So let's talk about how, first of all, maybe before we get into how you work, let's talk about who you work with and the types of clients that are ideal fits for you.
Sure. Anybody that is looking to invest in a franchise, and that could be, as you've mentioned earlier, we actually use the term corporate refugee.
No.
All right.
Yep.
And a refugee is all encompassing. They're tired of the corporate politics.
Right.
They got laid off, or their ageism, as you mentioned.
Yep.
So those are great ideal candidates for us as well as existing entrepreneurs, folks that are looking to complement an existing business that they own, folks that are looking to maybe, instead of just having a small little empire, they're looking to build a massive kingdom. So existing franchisees, existing small business owners are great. Sue also mentioned earlier on, husbands or wives that have been stay at home and looking to get back in the corporate world and do something, much like my wife did. So we do work nationally, so it's not just local. The field is wide open on folks that we work with.
Yeah.
And I'll just add also people who want to diversify their current investments. A lot of people don't want to only be in the stock market or just be with mutual funds. It's a really nice way to invest and diversify by owning businesses or giving back to community. There's a whole lot of reasons. And I'll just mention there's also a big shift in the younger generation wanting to be business owners. I think that millennials, maybe older Gen Zs, they don't want to ever have to work for anyone. So we're seeing more and more people of that age considering business ownership as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's talk about how you work with individuals that come to you, what that process is, what that looks like.
Yep. So Sue and I will tag team on this because at the end of the day, franchising is all about following a process. So Sue and I practice what we preach. In fact, we are part of a larger organization as well. So it's not just Sue and I, our parent company, who we originally invested with, and to this day, we still pay royalties.
So you're a franchise yourself?
We are. Absolutely.
Oh, cool. I'm not sure I knew that. That's good.
I will just add, technically we're called a business opportunity.
No, I get it.
But go ahead.
I get
it.
it.
Acts like a franchise.
But it looks and acts and talks and
Absolutely.
like a franchise. So you're basically eating your own cooking in a way.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we pay royalties and we get lots of benefits for that. But
Yeah.
but one of the benefits is they vet the hundreds of franchises that are in our portfolio. It's not just Sue and I going, oh, I like that one, I like this one. At corporate, they have a team of I think it's 5 or 6 people that just look at franchises and have to meet certain criteria to get into our portfolio. Back to the process. So it is all about following a process. So our process is I do a lot of the initial inquiries. So business development, frankly, that's how we wound up on your show. And so I do what are you looking for, talking to folks, explaining how we could potentially help them. And then if they're interested, I send them a little bit of a homework assignment. And I joke that it's a homework assignment, but it is a homework assignment because our clients have to investigate and invest the time to make sure they're going to invest in the right business process. We ask them to complete that candidate profile form, do the homework assignment. They send it back. Then we introduce them to Sue. Sue and I, we joke that we talk about them over a glass of wine. Because I initially spoke to him, so there's a transfer of knowledge.
Yep.
And then Sue comes up with some ideas, and then
and I really take them through the whole matchmaking process, talking about the individual businesses that I recommend. And I may come back on that first call, 3, 4, maybe 5 businesses to start with, never competitors, never in the same industry, because it's important, again, to open people's minds. Not all franchising is food. There's a lot of industries out there that are represented by franchises. And then I help guide them through. If they need funding, we help them with, introducing to people who can help fund that business. But that's really what I do. I do more of working with the candidates in the long term on the projects. Also, we have found that Craig does a really good job in that first call because I want to help everybody, whether they have money or not. So he does help us to make sure we're working with really qualified candidates as well.
And by the way, once I turn them over to Sue, no one ever talks to me again.
No, you've done your job at that point. That's really a great point that you bring up because it's really important to tell people the truth about them, whether it's because they're not ready, they don't have enough financial cushion to be able to take the ups and downs of a new business. It's really important to tell the truth to people about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Expectations are really important.
And from a financial aspect, we also help with financing. We work with several very strong finance partners that help our candidates fund, whether it's through an SBA loan, there's something called ROBS, Rollover for Business Startups. There are other ways to fund. So that's an additional service that we provide as well to help on the funding.
So you get to this point where you're recommending different franchise opportunities. Then how does that unfold from there, and how do you get to a point where you're selecting?
Sure. So in franchise speak, it's called a discovery process. And again, we keep using the word process because that is the point of a franchise. When you're buying into a franchise, you're getting a set of proven business processes for every aspect. And the way that works is it's a more detailed introduction of the business by the actual franchisor and their development team. There'll be ongoing conversations about marketing and specifics. How do you find your clients? What is the marketing? What's the social media aspect, et cetera? There'll be a part about operations, about staffing. All of those are usually webinars or calls. They go through something called the franchise disclosure document, which is the Federal Trade Commission regulatory document all franchisors operate under. That's a subject for another day. And then assuming both parties are interested in each other, because as we mentioned, they're awarded, typically it culminates in a meet the team day or a discovery day. That's really your final step before making a decision. So there is no money that's going to exchange hands until you're really sure you've fully done your due diligence and your homework, and this is a good fit for you.
Craig?
When she talked about money, and this is something you may bring up shortly, John, but I do want to mention that our services are no cost to our to our clients. Franchisors actually compensate us. So our only ask is transparency with our clients. If they're looking at other franchises or interested in other franchises, we encourage that, right? Just be open with us. So we don't duplicate efforts.
Yeah, this is a really important concept, I think, because what you're saying is the reverse of that, is that folks that buy a franchise, they're going to pay a certain set fee regardless of whether they get help or not.
Absolutely.
So you might as well get help.
Exactly.
Help's a good thing. It's not going to increase the franchise fee that you pay.
That's correct.
To get that franchise.
That's correct.
I did know that much.
That's good. You listened the last time we were on.
That's right. I did listen. Yeah, that's really important. And it's important because we're talking about a lot of money and we're talking about a big commitment.
Absolutely.
Right? Let's talk about the commitment.
Sure. So it's a commitment, not just financially. It's a commitment of your time. I always say it's a family commitment. If we talk to one spouse and the other has a job and they won't be involved, it's still going to affect them. Owning a business is a family decision, and we try to get both spouses or family members or whomever's going to work on it on the phone at the same time. We see a lot of couples go into business and they may not always agree on what kind of business they want to go into. It's a lot better to know that up front and have couples have that conversation as well. Time, money, energy, all of those things. It's a big commitment to own a business, but it has so many benefits.
Yeah, and it's also a length of time. You mentioned 10 years, right? Is that kind of the common?
That's the common. There's a couple that are less. Yes.
Yeah, and so 10 years is a big chunk out of somebody's life that you're committing over to this
Correct.
endeavor. Yeah, so that's really important. Craig, you got something to add?
Yeah, when I was using the marriage analogy early on, and hopefully this ties everything together about the whole matchmaking prospect, it is a family. So it's not just the family that's investing, but you're investing in a family of other franchisees, and they all should work together. Because most franchises are territorial based. You're not competing against another franchisee.
Right.
On the contrary, they want the franchisees all to work together to better the brand.
Right.
And so it's a family on that side as well.
And learn from each other. And right. Yeah.
It's a team.
Yeah, that's terrific. Good words there. I would love it as we come to a close if you could share maybe a success story or two that helps illustrate the great work you do.
Sure. I'll give one great example. Several years ago, I had an initial call with a client that we found through LinkedIn. It was a corporate person that actually I never worked with, but I worked at the same company. She was out on the West Coast. So again, we work nationally. She was looking to keep her current job. Her husband was also in corporate, and together they wanted to go through the process. We went through the process, as we've previously described, and they ultimately invested in an emerging massage franchise. They signed up for a 3-pack, which means 3 territories. And as Sue also previously mentioned, they opened the first one. They were actually very close to cash flow positive the day they opened, because as that franchise and that location was being built out, it's a recurring membership model, which, by the way, we're big fans of recurring revenue. They were building the membership the day they opened. Right, they were close to cash flow positive.
Wow.
Right? Worked for a year or so. The profits from the first location then funded the second location, right? They're in the process of, and I'm not really sure, honey,
They have the third one open.
if they have the
Yes,
third one
all of
open
them
yet.
open.
So it's gone exactly according to plan, and now they have the luxury of deciding, okay, do we both keep our corporate jobs and just run the semi-absentee businesses, manage the manager, which is also, we're big fans of that model. Do one leave and expand? Do they both leave and build an empire? Good problem to have.
Yeah, and I'll just say on a totally different end of that for another success story, we worked with an Air Force veteran and didn't really know what he wanted to do, and once he returned from his service, and we love veterans to work with them. They're great at following process, but we also are so appreciative of their service. But he became more of an owner-operator. He wanted to do the whole day-to-day. And so his businesses that he was looking at was completely different than the one Craig mentioned. Wanted to be active, purchased a few territories of a home improvement business, and is doing phenomenal work and is very pleased. In fact, he calls me periodically, which is a real plus, to tell me how well it's doing and how we've changed his life. And that's really what this is all about.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So great stories and great work that the two of you are doing. And we're just delighted we could have you here to share that work and put a spotlight on it. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
But let's get to the most important question, which is how folks can find you.
Sure. There's lots of different ways. You can look on LinkedIn for our names, Sue and Craig Derene. There's a Franchise Connect Pro LinkedIn profile as well. You can go to franchiseconnectpro.com. You can also call us at 770-366-0715 or email us, Craig at franchiseconnectpro.com or Sue at franchiseconnectpro.com.
We're also very active on social media. So on LinkedIn posts, X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, right. Right. Who knows what it's called today?
Yes.
Instagram, Facebook. So lots of informative posts through social as well.
Awesome. Sue and Craig Derene from Franchise Connect Pro. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, John. Good to see you again.
You too. Hey, folks, just a couple of quick things before we let you go for today. If you are looking for classic, traditional, authentic Italian cuisine, then there's no better place around the North Fulton area to stop than Casanova Italian Restaurant. They are fantastic. They are a cook-to-order kitchen serving traditional Italian fare, all the usual dishes, pasta, chicken, seafood, veal, vegetarian, and they've got gluten-free options as well. But here's the thing. They were farm to table before that was cool. They've had that garden behind the restaurant for years, and they bring those fresh ingredients inside and put them into their dishes. They also have great catering too. Don't forget that. CasanovaRestaurant.com is the website. You can check them out, but I encourage you just to make a reservation and go, because you will thank me later. Also, I want to just put in a quick shout out, if I can, for my book. I've written a book called The Generosity Mindset, A Journey to Business Success by Raising Your Confidence, Value, and Prices. If you're a solo, small professional services provider and you've got issues around your confidence and your value, the value that clients see in you or your pricing, this book may be for you. Go to thegenerositymindset.com to learn more and learn where to buy the book, which is essentially everywhere. Also, I want to thank you, our listener. You have supported us for many years, and this show's lasted a lot longer than I thought it would. I don't know what I was thinking in terms of how long it would last, but it's certainly gone a lot longer than I thought it would in terms of certainly the number of shows, and we're almost up to show number 800. We've only made it this far because of you. You continue to support us in so many different ways. You send us great guests. You also share our post on social media. You like us on social media, and we're grateful for all that support. You help us live into our mission to be the voice of business in the North Fulton region, and for that, we are grateful to you. So thank you. So for my guests, Sue and Craig Derene, I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.